I made the decision to sell an old wooden table I didn't think anyone would need more than me on Craigslist. I anticipated receiving some inquiries from possible buyers when I placed an advertisement with photos and a brief description. My email was overflowing with messages in a matter of hours, but one in particular drew my attention. It came from a Mark named guy. There was a catch with Mark though, even though he seemed interested in the table. Before he made the purchase, he insisted on seeing it in person. I wouldn't have agreed normally, but his message seemed friendly enough, and I needed money. I said, why not, and granted him permission to visit later that night. I wiped the table and made it look presentable while I waited for him to arrive. Mark looked innocent enough in his faded jeans and shirt when he got there. I ushered him inside, and we got to talking about the table, its background, and my motivation for selling it. But Mark's inquiries became increasingly bizarre. He inquired about my living situation, the design of my house, and whether or not I was living alone. My mind began to ring with alarms. Though I wasn't sure if I was overthinking it, I gave him a quick tour anyway. But that was the moment the situation turned terrifying. Mind showing me the rest of the house? Mark asked with a smile that soon became an awkward grin. I didn't want to let him have my uneasy feeling, so I gently told him that I was only interested in selling the table. In an instant, his manner changed from strange to hostile. He became combative, threatening me and demanding to see the rest of the house. I realized in a panic that I had to get him out of my house. I had to tell him to go because I had another appointment. That's when the actual nightmare started. Red in the eyes, Mark stepped forward to take a firm hold of my arm. "Show me the house or else," he bellowed. My blood ran cold, and I knew I had to get away. I told him to get out as I shoved him aside. But Mark was unwavering in his resolve. He punched me, and even though it hurt so much, I felt a rush of adrenaline. I was able to seize a lamp that was close by and struck him in the arm with it. I was able to run toward the front door as he let go of me after yelling in pain. Mark beat on the door while I locked it behind me, yelling and making threats. I called 911 with trembling hands and described the horrifying situation to the dispatcher. After what seemed like an eternity, I heard sirens approaching from a distance. Mark attempted one last breakout, breaking through a window and vanishing into the darkness. I described the terrifying encounter to the police when they came, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Deeply shaken by the mixture of fear, anger, and relief. Mark had made off with my laptop and some money, but the damage he caused was far more expensive. My goal was to find a new car on Craigslist, but I had no idea that this trip would take me to a strange and terrifying experience that I would never forget. The story started when I happened upon an advertisement for a gorgeous BMW, the kind of vehicle that dreams are made of. The price was incredibly low, and the picture showed a spotless machine soaking up the warm glow of the sun. Though doubt began to seep into my thoughts, curiosity overcame it. I thought to myself, maybe this is my lucky day, and I messaged the seller. The seller surprised us by responding right away, and we set up a time to check out the car. His tone was a little off-putting, even though his texts were straightforward. Still, I chose to proceed cautiously. Finally, the meeting day arrived. After arriving at the specified address by car, I was met by a lonely, unsettling scene that looked like it was taken from a horror film. I parked far away and walked up to the address to be safe. The BMW was standing there, or so the placard on the car said. Nothing like the immaculate pictures I'd seen. In fact, it looked like a beat-up artifact from the 1980s. My heart fell when my instincts warned me that this was a trap. I went up to the seller, a ramshackle, wild-eyed eccentric who didn't look like the person in the Craigslist pictures. I asked him why he used photoshopped images, trying not to lose my cool. His tone sharply changed as he shot back, raising his voice to a high note and narrowing his eyes. "What's wrong with it? You got a problem?" he asked. I told him I just wanted to see the car from the pictures, that's all, as I tried not to panic. I didn't want to make things worse. The man suddenly leaned closer, and a menacing smile appeared on his face. "You think you're too good for my car?" he snarled menacingly. The turn of events shocked me beyond belief. I realized the guy was insane, and panic shot through me. I realized I had to get away as soon as he grabbed my arm tightly, like a vice. Madness gleamed in his eyes, and his breath stank. "You're not leaving until you buy my car," he growled, his voice full of menace. My instinct for survival took over. Thinking quickly was necessary. I grabbed the cash out of my car and said, "I'll buy it," mustering all of my courage. He hesitated for a second, believing he had won. Seizing the chance, I managed to break free from his hold on my arm and quickly ran towards my vehicle. I could hear him screaming and swearing as I drove off, but I turned away. I informed the authorities of the terrifying encounter right away. I was terrified that the insane man would chase me even as I was leaving. I changed the locks and put in his security system as extra precautions. The man's intentions were still unknown. That terrifying experience made me realize how dangerous internet marketplaces can be and how important it is to follow your gut. Was he really insane, or was he just a desperate con man trying to scare off unsuspecting people? On one beautiful Saturday, my friend and I decided to sell a phone on Craigslist. It wasn't especially new because we had finished it successfully before. We had made arrangements for the buyer to meet us at the Vancouver Metrotown SkyTrain station this time. The man looked like a regular guy trying to find a phone. Although we were a little early, we chatted while waiting for the buyer. My friend had the phone that we wanted to sell. A couple of guys who looked like they were in their mid-20s came over. They felt off, even though they initially looked normal. They gave us a closer look than an ordinary phone buyer would. Upon my friend's offer of the phone, the prospective buyer hesitated. Before turning to face his friend, he turned to face us. My friend fainted when they suddenly grabbed her phone. Startled though, I leapt to help her. Apart from taking the phone, they also pushed my friend to the ground. She was injured, so they ran away. In a fury, I pursued them. I couldn't believe how strong he was when I finally caught up to him and attempted to take the phone. I felt like I was using my hands to try to stop a gigantic train. The other guy was angry and afraid at the same time as he rounded me. I grew nervous as he got closer. Now it was more than just a phone. They were after us. They were scared for our safety, so one of them told me not to call the police. Fear seemed to be suffocating me. I had no choice but to help my friend, who lay bleeding and helpless on the ground. But what could we possibly do to put an end to these terrifying outsiders? My heart was pounding even though I felt powerless. Though I was aware of Craigslist scams, I never thought about falling for one myself. Glancing at us, they had frowns on their faces. People were unaware of what was happening. I wanted to scream for help, but fear stopped me. With my friend still on the ground, I was scared and alone. Gradually, it became apparent that their words were sincere. Choosing to let them go or risk losing our lives was the only option available to me. Slowly, my hands shaking, I released a man's arm. I cried a little, but not too much, as they drove off with a stolen phone. We watched them fade away, vanishing into the crowd. I helped my friend up, even though I knew she was hurt, but it wasn't as bad as we were afraid. Surrounding onlookers were shivering, confused, and unsure of what had occurred. We were so terrified that we chose not to call the police for help. We are still reminded of that day, and since then, we have learned to be cautious when making purchases online. There are situations in which safety comes before a phone, and you can never be too cautious.